Well, hello. It's Geospatial 2.0 Friday talk time. I've got another title up here which I'm going to explore, which is around innovation, one of my favorite topics. So the two meanings of innovation is what we're going to cover today. Let's jump in. I'm going to just share with you, and there's actually a couple of themes here which are from my thoughts of the day this week, which relate to this talk. A couple of quite popular thoughts of the day that I shared over the week I've put in place here. Let me start with the one on the left. I'll read it to you. Thought of the day one: what can we learn from Uber? Their why: we connect a driver to a passenger. Ever seen them mention maps where spatial analysis or spatial intelligence? Nope. Outcome: yes. You'll see there's a business theme to that, and again, I think it goes back to some of the conversations I've had in the past, and we'll jump into that today. Is how does one share one's value proposition? The second one, actually on the right there, actually came from my friend Nadine at OGC. She actually mentioned this in a private exchange between, and I thought it was such a great quote. I needed to put it up. Waiting for the world to understand what we do and the value of what we do is not an option anymore. I really like that, and there were lots of people that commented on that and had thoughts on that. And I mentioned in my responses that I'm not sure we're totally waiting for the world to understand it. I think our goal is really to actually share the value that we bring and be different in our approach. And I think that's really at the core of what Geospatial 2.0 is. So let's jump into innovation. I always have fascinating conversation with people. It's part of the joy of what I do. And over the years, I've got to know some really interesting folks. So I wanted to talk initially about one type of innovation, and that's technical innovation or technology innovation. And I think when we think in our geospatial world of innovation, we often align it with technology. And certainly the Geospatial 2.0 conversation began based on the evolution of technology, new sensors to collect data and new analytical methods to process and analyze that data in artificial intelligence, machine learning. But three examples I'm going to show here. There are many others I could have shared. I've got dangerous in understanding a bit more about INSAR. That is radar, which is from, well, I'll talk about from satellites. It doesn't necessarily need to be from satellites, but I think more often than not it is from satellites. And I'm no expert on INSAR, absolutely not an expert on INSAR. But the more I learn about the capabilities of radar, the more it makes my head spin with the possibilities. So INSAR, and again, I'm no expert. John's the expert. Thanks for this, and actually thanks for this information, John. John Metzer, I think this is, I always mispronounce John's name. You'll see him in my LinkedIn stuff. He comments a lot on stuff in LinkedIn. But John was telling me about L-band in the INSAR world, which can punch through vegetation. So you can actually get a picture of the ground. So, if you're up in the sky and INSAR can punch through clouds, it can punch through vegetation and see the ground. And INSAR, and again, I'm not going to go into any details of INSAR at all, go read about it or ask John, is amazingly good at detecting displacement, that is movements in the ground. So it's an amazing technology, and its use is primarily, again, I'm no expert, but one of its primary use cases is to detect displacement. Let's go to satellite imagery. I mean, it's been around for a long time, lots of people working in that place. I spoke to Alison at Black Sky just recently, and Alison is another fascinating girl. She was telling me about some of the stuff that Black Sky are doing, and a couple of platforms they've got which I thought were really interesting. First of all, you can actually log into one of their platforms and actually reorbit their constellation. So if you actually wanted to fly over Salt Lake City because you wanted to see something, you can actually, through this interface, reset the orbit of satellite constellation. I'm not totally sure, but you can actually get that imagery taken through requesting it through an interface. So simple and easy. And they've also got some AI tools or some analytical tools in there that can do things like object identification. So not only can you reset and get that imagery very quickly, and do some analysis, but they've also got a piece which is event driven as well. So if something happened I don't know, usually we think about sort of disasters, hurricanes and things like that. If something happened and you got alerts, they've got a platform which sends alerts to you to say, there's something happening around your building in Houston or something like that. You can then go in and actually then set that satellite to go over that area to get those pictures. So very automated workflows. I thought it was fantastic stuff. So I think that satellite imagery, one of the key parts of that is monitoring. And that's a good example from Black Sky. You can monitor events that are happening very effectively. So let's go to LiDAR. I worked at a company not that long ago actually, that were really big into the key division within that organization actually was building hardware and sensors, and LiDAR was an important part of that. And LiDAR obviously is the ability using laser to build point clouds and meshes, and you can actually build a 3D world. So I mean really the LiDAR world is all about the sort of notion of digital twin. So I've kind of shared with you 3 innovations technologically that are happening, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on within the large-brained world, the technical people, to build that stuff out. And what we're really talking about here is data collection. Ultimately, is each of those things is creating data for us to process. And I've highlighted there potential use cases for those, InSAR with displacement, satellite imagery with monitoring, and then LiDAR with building sort of digital twins. But the big question that I have, and I often ask that within my sort of day-to-day work, and within Critigen we ask that question all the time, is what next? Now I've got that InSAR data, now I've got that imagery collected, and now I'm doing some degree of monitoring or looking at displacement. What is the problem I'm actually trying to solve? So instead of starting at the technology, actually sort of looking at beyond just the technology. So let me move to the other part of this sort of innovations question. It's business innovation, and I kind of split Geospatial 2.0 into the 2 parts. There's technical innovation and some amazing things happening there, and business innovation. And business innovation is probably the primary place where I'm now focused, and I actually think that it's a place that needs considerably more focus. So I put this, when I first came to America, The Field of Dreams was a film that came out, and I really thought it was a great film. Didn't know what baseball was particularly. Never heard of Babe Ruth actually, those sort of people. But I saw that film and really enjoyed it. There is a tendency in IT, so I'm not going to label GIS and Geospatial as the only guilty parties here, of guessing what customers need. And guessing means a field of dreams. If we build it, they will come. We have this great technology, we have this great data, we'll build this stuff out that we think people need, and we'll hope they come. I would argue that's a failed approach, and we still do it a lot. And I've worked quite a lot in the Geospatial 2.0 world with these startups. A lot of those guys are going to fail. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of those guys are going to fail, in part because they take that approach. They take the field of dreams approach, the guess approach. I mentioned a book, I think probably last week, which is called Brick by Brick, which is the history of Lego. And somebody asked me, why should I read that? Lego is a really great case study on business innovation through success and failure. And I've put up the top there, instead of guessing, which Lego did at one point in their journey, they know. So very briefly, and I won't go through it because we've got a ton of time, but Lego was super successful in the 90s. The digital revolution began. Their revenue started to go down. They sort of went into mini panic, brought a whole new team of people on board, a new CEO, who decided to change the company and guessed in large part what the audience for Lego would be, and guessed who a wider audience would be. It nearly bankrupted the company. The third stage of the saving of the company and where they are today was actually stepping backwards and looking at the company and reassessing where they were and what their strengths and what their core was. And the way they did that was they spent a lot of time with their core audience, who were, I think, 7 to 12-year-old boys. I've got a couple of little fellas here working with Lego. But they sat down and understood their customers. They sat down and really, really spent time watching those kids and sharing ideas that the team had got with the kids to see if it resonated with them. So they rebuilt their business based on knowing and not guessing. Business innovation. So I'll split this down into two parts. I think technology innovation is really based around collection and how we collect new sensors, etc., processing that data, because we know that geospatial data is tough, aggregating that data, all those good things, analyzing that data, that falls into the algorithm world, that falls into AI machine learning, and then visualizing that. And commonly in GIS that means maps, but again, I've sort of not railed on it. I've said that it's really about answering questions rather than promoting a map. Business innovation is, first of all, and I've underlined that above me there, understand the customer. We don't do a very good job at that, and I'm gonna do more than one Friday talk around the customer and how we best spend time with customers like Lego did. I put in brackets there, once we understand the customer and a customer's problem, we solve problems using technology. So certainly technology innovation comes in at that place, but business innovation begins with understanding the customer. And you'll hear me, I've used these pictures too many times, but my great belief is we have to tell data-driven stories. And we live in a multi-dimensional data world. I gave examples above of different data sources, but truly geospatial is not a two-dimensional data source. It's 3 dimensions, it's 4 dimensions. We have to tell data stories which allow folks that are not in our world, those are in the business world who know nothing about geospatial, how they can work through some of their problems leveraging geospatial data, and somewhere in there geospatial technology. So I think the focus I'll have again moving forward is much more around this sort of notion of business innovation and how we can spread the word of geospatial and the value that geospatial brings to a much wider audience. So that's my Friday talk. That's me again, my lovely picture, and that's my email address. I really feel free to reach back to me. I mean, the stuff that I talk about and sort of tweet about and things is driven by people actually providing me feedback, giving me different opinions, reinforcing things I'm saying or telling me I'm wrong. So, if you have an opinion, you have a thought on this, please send it my way, because I would really love to include that in the stuff that I share in social media. So, fantastic weekend, and we'll do it again next week.